Welcome, everyone, to the NJ1ST podcast. My name is Ryan McDonald. Thank you for joining me. We have a bunch of guests today that I have the pleasure of bringing to you all. A lot of information is going to be coming your way regarding New Jersey politics and election integrity, what happened in 2022, what we can look out for in 2023 and be prepared for in 2024 and going forward. I came across Hillary Jersey, one of the grassroots activists at the Conservative Jersey annual event. She had this tent up, NJ Stands Up, about Mercer County election integrity. I remember seeing a Substack. A lot of circus stuff happened last year with the elections in Mercer County. Let's put it at that. So we have a bunch of activists with Hillary in Mercer County that prepared a program for us that we can see the outcomes of the data, the information, their Oprah requests, everything that happened last year, so we can prepare election integrity, real patriot works. And thank you, Mark. We'll start off with Mark for joining me. And you can introduce your team that you have with you.
Thank you, Ryan. My name is Mark Demo, and I'm a citizen of Essex County, New Jersey. And I got involved in helping to audit and analyze the results of the November 8th, 2022 election as a result of my friendship with Monica Quaste. We'll go into that a little bit more, but I did the analysis in the presentation that you'll see over the next few minutes. Drew?
Hi, I'm Drew Ciaffardelli, and I'm running for Mercer County Sheriff as a constitutional sheriff. And I met Mark at a presentation he did at a town hall meeting in Hamilton, and I was impressed by the data that he put together. I had reached out to the sheriff in Mercer County when we had an election integrity issue in my county and didn't get a phone call back. So that inspired me to run for sheriff.
Awesome. And Mike next.
Hi, I'm Mike McKiddish. I'm an independent voter in Robbinsville District 1. And I got involved in this when I received a letter, I believe in December, early December, informing me that my vote did not count because I voted by machine. And of course, the chaos of the November of 22 general election was evident right from the start. I actually sent an email to the superintendent of elections, that was Nathaniel Walker, at that time. He assured me that no voters would be disenfranchised, which was incorrect at that time because I did get that letter. And as a result of that, I got involved and tried to find out exactly what did happen and became very frustrated not getting answers. And I continue to be frustrated with not getting answers. But I met Mark, and Mark is a great data analyst and pulled together some very interesting data that suggested to me that this vote shouldn't have been certified by anyone. And here we are in the merry month of August of 2023, and the numbers still don't add up. The numbers that were given to the state election reporting system are different than what was certified in Mercer County. And then the state, I guess it was the state, changed the numbers when they reported those numbers to the federal government. So there's a lot of open questions and still not a whole lot of answers. Sorry for rambling long.
No,
that's the story.
That's what we want to hear, and well said. I brought up this Substack, and I'll have this in the link description so people can look at. It is the public testimony of right after that whole election day occurred last year in 2022. People gave their public comment, gave rational answers and responses for what happened and how they want to make sure none of this was going to happen again. However, when you look into it in the data, as I have through Mark Demo's presentation that we're going to go through, and how Mike just described to us, the numbers do not match up, and we have questions and they're not being answered. It's just being swept under the rug. And people like Drew, who is a grassroots conservative constitutionalist patriot, like he said, he's running, gets a fire in his heart, makes himself run for office, and that's what we need. So Mark, if we can start the review of November 8th. Oh, yep. Sorry.
One more. We have one more. We have one more podcast participant. That's Monica Quaste. Monica, do you want to introduce yourself?
She actually hopped off. It wasn't the connection. So if you want to introduce her for you. Yep.
Well, we'll get to it. We'll get to it in the presentation then. Okay,
great.
Let's get started.
So we'll begin the review of November 8th Mercer County election. This is the review of 2022, and this is the outcomes today, a couple of days ago. So we'll begin. And the background. You want to begin? Go ahead.
Yeah. So very quickly, organizing and executing an election should be very simple. You see sixth graders in elementary school organize a vote, count the vote, and then be able to audit the vote. And the point of this presentation is to demonstrate that to our elected officials that we're on the wrong path, and we need to support policies and people who want to simplify the process and make and bring accountability and transparency to the process, right? And the voting machines and the process that we have now today, all it does is layer in complexity and costs. And as a result, that yielded chaos in the last few elections in Mercer County, right? And the point I'd like to make here is that just because the process is complex, it doesn't mean it needs to be inaccurate. Think about your bank account. Your debits and credits reconcile nightly down to the penny. And if they're off, everyone goes on a hunt to find the difference, right? And we must apply the same exacting standards to each of our ballots.
Definitely. And when I read that, I thought of my own bank account and how I can check it on my phone. I'm checking it every single day to make sure, auditing it myself.
Yeah. Mike or Drew, do you want to take this one? What happened?
Mike, you should probably... Yeah. Mike has firsthand experience, so Mike should grab this one.
Yeah, so I walked into the voting booth, I think around 6:30 or so in the morning. We went to the poll book. We were instructed to sign in the poll book. We did. This is my wife and I. And we were then told that all of the machines in Mercer County were down. And therefore, we had to fill out a provisional ballot. We were given Sharpies, and I had some concerns about that because on the back of the ballot, there was a school board election, and I was concerned that the Sharpies would have bled through. But as it turned out, that wasn't the problem at all. It was the fact that I was given a provisional ballot. I found out later that sometime later that about an hour to an hour and a half after we voted, the poll workers were then instructed to give out regular ballots, and then those regular ballots were secured, I guess, in some kind of box that ended up getting counted at a later time. But my wife and I both filled out the provisional ballots as instructed, and then we went home. And we've done this in just about every election, unless I was sick or something. We voted regularly. We think that that is one of the most important rights that you have. And also, it is one of the most important responsibilities of government to provide a fair and transparent and accurate election. So again, we found out the chaos that was there that day. And I'm not really sure why there was so much chaos, because if a machine goes down, even in a district, they should have had a backup plan. The fact that multiple machines went down, in my opinion, is irrelevant. They should have had a plan. And I was told that the poll workers had an error in giving us a provisional ballot, should not have given us a provisional ballot. Did find out subsequently through Mark's analysis that some of the voters who were given provisional ballots, their vote counted and mine did not. So I'm still in search of that answer. Very frustrating. As I said before, here we are in August of 2023, trying to figure out what happened in November of 2022.
Thanks, Mike. Mm-hmm. So just for emphasis, Ryan, mm-hmm. all the voting machines, all 189 voting machines on election day in Mercer County were down. The original instructions from the Board of Ed was to use provisional ballots. Then when the Board of Ed realized that the scope of the problem, they realized that they would run out of provisional ballots. Therefore, they switched back to the regular ballots, right? And then those regular ballots were inserted in, rather than scanned into the tabulator. They were inserted into the body of the voting machine to be transported to the Board of Ed and counted centrally later. Well, the problem with that is the county had there were no chain of custody. The ballots were not counted before they left the precinct. Therefore, there was chain of custody is impossible to establish at this point, right? So
Correct.
You've got multiple problems right off the bat. The machines don't work. The chain of custody doesn't exist. And then let's go to the next slide.
Well, hang on a second before you go. So last week at the Board of Elections meeting, I learned that the people at the Board of Elections didn't touch the election day ballots. They never do. So Dominion and the county clerk showed up, I guess the next day, and had somehow managed to scan these ballots through a tabulator. We, at this point, don't know how they managed to do that. Did Dominion change the software so that they could finally read the ballots? Were there other machines there that were capable of doing it already? Who actually scanned them? We know that the staff at the election Board of Elections office didn't touch them from my meeting last week. So who did touch them? Who made sure they all got ran? You know, there's a lot of unanswered questions there.
Right. And more poignant to the points that there is a stress for election integrity. I believe that Stephanie Reichart, the young Republican from Mercer County that I mentioned before we started recording, she brought up chain of custody specifically. So it's something that's known that there's a problem. It has to be addressed. You guys are 100% correct. And
I'll add one more thing to that. So when they did that count, who was there to observe it? You know, there's normally members of the public monitoring what's going on. There was no member of the public. If there was, would they even have let them in? And that, to me, is particularly the reason why I'm running for sheriff, because a lot of times what happens is they call the local police to escort the observers out, where the sheriff should be showing up and saying, oh, no, they have a right to be here.
Right. That second tabulation was in the dark, in the shadows.
Right.
So Hamilton Township School Board race, is this what kicked it all off? I think it is, isn't it?
This was kicked it off. This was what kicked it all off. So I'll introduce Monica Quaste. Monica was a candidate for the Board of Education race in Hamilton Township during the November 2022 election. And at the end of election day, she was well ahead of the two incumbents, right? She was in second place. And then when all the ballots were when all the mail-in ballots were finished counting, Monica ended up in fourth place. And as a result, Monica, do you want to tell the rest of your story?
Absolutely. I think now what's going on in our school systems is such a travesty, and it really touched my heart and motivated me to get involved, even though my kids are grown and out of the house. But as a former educator, I was just passionate about defending our children's and our parents' freedom in the school district, and got motivated to run and tagged my friend Stacy Byrne to join with me on this road into school politics. And we really invested a lot of hard time and energy into our campaign. So when the results came in, it was kind of devastating, and everybody was just questioning why. Like, how could that possibly happen? And I just really wanted the public to know the truth. Like, okay, if I lost fairly, that's fine. Show it to me. Show me what happened. And when Mark Demo approached me and said that he would help me to confront, through the courts, I was all
I'll pick up where we're losing her, Ryan. I'll pick up where she left off.
No worries.
Monica had the courage to contest the results of the election, and she sued the county. And as a result of she ultimately withdrew her case, right? But as a result of of her lawsuit, we were able to obtain a large amount of election data for the November 2022, all the November 2022 races in Mercer County. And subsequently, we've learned that based on a recent analysis that we finished, Monica was ahead after after counting all but 6,700 mail-in ballots, which the county has refused to provide to us. She held a 68-point lead over her third place challenger. So we still don't know if she won. But she was in a good position on election night, and then subsequently, based on the ballots that the county has provided to us and that we've counted, and that we're still attempting to get the rest of the mail-in ballots from the county.
I understand, and welcome back, Monica. If you want to finish up, but my one question is, was there any avenues for you to obtain that information of your election data, or did you have to sue them? There's no other way to get it. You have to sue the county.
No, I think that, well, they did the Oprah request and they weren't coming forward with it. So I went in front of the judge and just asked the judge if we could have that information, just so that we could have peace of mind that this was a fair election. And then the judge, did mandate them to send me the information. So
you
I
did
don't
do
think
Oprah request. You had to sue them even after going through Oprah. Oh, wow.
Correct. I don't think that we would have gotten that information without going in front of the judge.
And did you have anything else you want to finish up saying before you got cut off? Mark,
I know, I'm so sorry for that. And no, I'm just passionate about this. And I'm just so happy that we can get this word out to everybody in order to make some changes. That's all.
I can tell the passion, and trust me, that data that you were able to obtain, you and Mark, a lot of people are going to watch this episode and want that data just like I am. And it's in this program. It's in this PowerPoint, to be honest. I noticed. So we can go to the next one.
Yeah.
So Ryan, let me interject real quickly here. One of the things that I learned in this process was I called the sheriff, of course, didn't get a response. I called the local police and they said they only do civil law. I got bounced back and forth a little bit there. I finally called the prosecutor's office in Onofrio, and he said that he only prosecutes cases that are brought to him by law enforcement. So I said to him, okay, who's responsible for bringing this case to you? A couple of weeks later, he got back to me and said, the local police. I said, okay, are you going to tell them or do you want me to? Because they were, yeah. So I had been trying to get the cast vote records out of the machines before they were deleted. And basically what happened was they circled me around long enough that the deadline passed for getting them out. Fortunately, Mark got them anyway. I didn't need to get them, but I didn't know Mark at the time. So, this is another reason why I feel like as running for sheriff, I'm putting together a posse of people who can volunteer to become part of the posse and to take these types of complaints. Online, I have a crisis hotline that they can call in and file the complaint. Ideally, when I'm sheriff, I'll have people that will go out and record the complaint and give them an official document from the sheriff's office that they can take to the prosecutor instead of having to hire an attorney.
Awesome. I got two young grassroots patriots colleagues from Mercer County. I'll send them your way after this. I'll link up with you. But the research approach, Mark, you want to speak
so
on that
how
a
did
bit?
we, thank you. So how did we, so what approach did we take, right? This is all publicly available data that's obtained from Mercer County or the New Jersey Secretary of State or the Federal Election Assistance Commission, right? We found discrepancies in the reporting, right? We found discrepancies, as Mike had mentioned earlier, between what the county certified and what they reported to the public, what we found discrepancies in the election data that was reported by the county to the state of New Jersey to the voter history file. And then we found discrepancies, a third set of discrepancies between between the county data that the state reported to the federal government in the biannual election EAC election survey. So, and we'll go into those details as we go forward. So let me summarize what we found really before we start, right? So there are 5 key things that we found, right? So basically, the county certified the election using one set of ballots counted. They reported a different set of ballots counted to the state, and the state reported yet a third set of ballots counted to the Federal Assistance Commission, right? The second point, something happened which caused the county to likely underreport to the state thousands of election day ballots received from individual users, and we'll go into that. The county appears to maintain 2 sets of mail-in ballot records. One set of figures was certified, but a higher amount was reported to the state and used to manage vote-by-mail ballot interactions with the public. Next slide. The fourth point, the county appears to maintain 2 sets of provisional ballot records. One set of figures was certified and reported to the state, while another internal set was used to manage written communications with the public. For example, the letter that Mike received that said his provisional ballot didn't count. And then finally, we'll go into it later in the presentation, there were hundreds of election day early morning voters in Mercer who received disparate treatment. Some had their ballots rejected and others had their ballots accepted, while both of those groups appear to have followed the exact same voting procedure, right? Both groups successfully checked into the poll book, then they ultimately submitted a provisional ballot. Approximately half were accepted, approximately half were rejected. Why?
Right. Questions we need to know. These 5 discrepancies are what merit and warrant audits in any field, especially elections. That way we can get to the bottom of things and make sure they don't happen again.
Yeah. So this slide shows details the 3 different versions of numbers that were reported for the November 22nd election, right? The red column is what the county certified. The green column is what Mercer County reported to the state voter history file. And the blue column is what the state reported to the Federal Election Assistance Commission. And none of them really tie. And we want to know why.
The numbers there. Before I comment on that, Drew, Mike, or Monica, you want to comment anything on the numbers, them not lining up?
Well, he's going to get into details of each column and the mismatches, but the thing that stands out to me here is the county and the state. The state has fewer, but then they turn around and report to the federal government the same number that the county certified. So very suspicious. It's like, okay, so they knew how many got certified.
Right.
What was the motivation for?
What's the difference? Yeah. Why the difference? Yeah.
Why the difference? And I'm starting my own research for a book I'm writing, and it goes into elections in the past. And they definitely probably did that likewise, the same number. So they didn't get any federal investigations into election fraud or anything like that. I'm sure New Jersey, the state, wouldn't investigate their own county for election fraud, but we'll go forward.
All right. So looking at election day, the county certified 60,727 election day ballots received, but they only reported 55,858 to the state voter history file for a near 5,000 difference, right? And the townships with the 3 largest differences are reflected there below: Hightstown, Pennington, and Ewing. Let's go into the next slide, Ryan.
Sure, I'll just keep going. You let me know when to keep going.
Yeah. So you can see here the total that the county certified for Hightstown was 979 election day ballots received, right? But they only reported 161 to the state voter history file. And you can see here broken down by ward, right? We see the certified numbers broken down by ward, and then you can see the only district that the county reported anything to the state on was Hightstown District 1. Districts 2, 3, and 4, there were zero.
I missed that.
There was zero ballots reported to the state. And, you know, I know there are people who I have spoken to who know people in Hightstown, and they have asked them to check. And this is the experience that they had. They're in one of those wards where their ballots weren't reported to the state. Was it counted or was it not? It's hard to say.
Very interesting. I know that the New Jersey Libertarian Party actually operates out of Hightstown, so I will definitely be reaching out to people for that.
There was a small difference in the election day ballot, early voting ballots received. Mercer County certified 9,751, and they reported to the state 9,633 for a difference of 118. We didn't spend a lot of time on early voting because there was a lot of other wood to chop in the other ballot types. So interestingly, the total in-person voting, meaning early voting and election day, nothing matches between what the county certified, what they reported to the voter history file, and what the state reported to the Federal Election Commission. You can see the numbers right there. Why the differences? It shouldn't be hard. Mail-in voting. This is another head scratcher, right? The county certified 25,512 ballots received, but they reported to the state 28,080, right? And the footnote there is that Mercer County kept detailed records of each of these individuals' mail-in vote status, right? And we'll go into that a little bit, but you need to keep to ensure that people who check in on election day haven't already received a mail-in ballot or voted previously by mail or early voting. The county needs to keep that poll book up to date, right? So they have detailed records of when those 28,000 people were applied for a mail-in ballot, when they were sent a mail-in ballot, when they returned a mail-in ballot, when the mail-in ballot was counted, and the three townships in Mercer with the largest difference is Robbinsville, Trenton City, and West Windsor. And the Robbinsville numbers are ridiculous, right? It's almost it appears as though they did not count almost half of the ballots, the mail-in ballots that the county received.
Right, and for whatever discrepancies, right?
So just some additional backup here. So the average percentage of mail-in ballots received across all of Mercer for the November election was 25.5%, right? And so we broke down the individual townships, right? What was the individual percentage of mail-in ballots as a percentage of total ballots received for each of the townships? And you can see Robbinsville and Trenton City are off the map low, right?
Right, yep.
And we looked at just for giggles, we looked at the November 2021 election and the June 2023 election to find out if there's some unnatural aversion to mail-in voting in Robbinsville and Trenton, and the answer is no. They're slightly under the average for the county, but nowhere near what they are for the November 2022.
So, Mark, and I saw this yesterday when I was reviewing it. In June of 2023, I see 49 and 48%. What do those numbers represent?
Those are the percentage of mail-in ballots submitted by township residents in that election, right? So as I say there, so the second bullet, Robbinsville and Trenton percentage of mail-in ballots cast versus total ballots for the November 2021 and June 2023 elections were 27% and 49%. Well, so Robbinsville is 27 in November 2021 and 49 in June 2023. Trenton was 26% and 48% in those two elections, right? And the county average was 31% for November 2021 and 52% for June 2023. So as I said, those townships appear slightly less than the than the average, but not half of the average, right? Like they were in the first in the November 2022.
November 2022.
Yeah.
Right.
And to be fair on that, June of 23 is a primary, so you would naturally see, or we see a higher number in the entire county at 52%. And then in Robbinsville and Trenton City, you can see the numbers. But the general election generally is lower in terms of mail-in ballots. 31% is the county average. The point here, though, is that Robbinsville and Trenton City in November of 2022 appear to be extraordinarily low relative to November of 21.
And relative to every other town in that election, too.
Correct.
Yeah.
And for the ballots cast, is that saying the mail-in ballots, the votes that were received, not anything else, right? The votes that were received, ballots cast for vote by mail.
Well, it's important to distinguish the difference between
the ballot vote,
ballots and votes cast, right? Because the voter to ballots cast should be a 1-to-1 relationship, but the votes are different, right? Because you can have 3 votes for one race, like Monica's race in the school board. So it's like it's important to be clear about whether you're talking about ballots or voters or votes. And here we're talking about ballots cast.
Got it. Gotcha.
Right. And a little bit more detail drilled into the Robbinsville by district, right? And you can see different than the election day Heightstown district information, where entire districts were not reported to the state. In Robbinsville, it's completely different, because you can see the nine districts, and each of the districts has some number of certified received ballots, right? But it's obviously extremely low when you compare it to what they reported to the state voter history file. So,
it's almost half on every single one of them.
It is.
And I'd say, like, maybe it's got to be human error, right? That's involved in this, or maybe human fault, not just error. Like someone's doing this on purpose.
It's hard to say. There's an answer. What I'm guessing is that 662 people didn't have their ballots counted, and that's a problem. That's a huge problem.
Right.
And Mike might be in the difference column in his district.
Actually, Mike's in another column. We'll get to that.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I remember him mentioning that.
Oh, that's right, because he was not vote by mail.
He was.
And
I think the point here is, these are questions that we're raising. We really don't know what the result is here, but the government officials keep bouncing around. I think, as Drew mentioned before, in my attempt to get information, I was bounced from the Board of Elections to the Superintendent of Elections to the county clerk, back and forth. No one would answer the question. When you go to a public meeting, the only public group in this voting piece is the Board of Elections, and they keep telling you that it's not their responsibility. The question that I raised was, well, whose responsibility is it? Mm-hmm. And you find a different group that does not have public meetings, and it's very, very difficult to get information, including the Oprah request that Monica mentioned, and Mark has been battling, and I've been battling, just trying to get information. Maybe these things have answers, but nobody's telling us that. And the more they hide, the more concern we have.
Yeah, and we should, and why, and the county should want to understand what happened too. They should be fully transparent about it, right? So it doesn't happen again. Because if they can certify this election with the anomalies that you've had here, they can certify anything, and that's a problem. That's a problem. So here again, looking across what the county certified versus what they reported to the state, and then what the state reported to the FEC, the the numbers don't tie, right? The numbers that were reported to the federal government are much closer to what the county reported to the state, but they're not the same. Why not? So just a little bit more on the mail-in ballot before we move to the provisional issue. So the county, as I mentioned before, the county provided the state with detailed record keeping of key dates. Every county does, right? Of key dates regarding those 1,342 Robbinsville mail-in ballots applied for. They have the date that the information that the mail-in ballots were applied for. They have the date that the ballots were sent out. They have the date the ballots were received, and the date that the ballots were counted. Right. I have an example in the appendix which shows an example of that report. Right. But it's line by line, voter by voter. Right. So this detailed record keeping is necessary because it supports the poll workers' interactions with in-person voters on early voting and election day. Right. And in-person voters receive a provisional ballot for a number of reasons, including the fact that they either applied for a mail-in ballot or they had already voted by early voting or mail, right? So here you got the county certifying one set of numbers, reporting another set of numbers to the state, and then infusing that larger number into the poll book, potentially affecting the election day voters as well, right? So how many people have you heard? How many people do you know that have told you the story? I went to vote yesterday, and I was told I already voted, and I said no, I didn't. Right. That this can potentially be one reason why.
And this is pointing out the county record keeping, how important it is. And I have a little flyer here that when I attended a Trenton rally, working together for New Jersey for election integrity, they point out that there are some counties that are really bad at giving us or providing us this election data. And they're predominantly Republican. Hunterdon County, Cape May, Ocean, Somerset, Sussex, Warren. Sounds like the counties, maybe Middlesex or Mercer, they're giving you their records, or they're keeping it. I don't know, but I just have a flyer here and it made me think of that.
Yep.
Yeah, Ryan, it's interesting that you say that, because one thing that I've noticed is that it's very taboo in the Republican Party to talk about election integrity. So this is not a partisan issue. This is a bipartisan issue. Both sides, there's something wrong. I like to say, they're probably both cheating, and neither one wants the other side to find out about it.
Right, grassroots, baby.
Yeah, and it's become a battle of who can cheat better.
Let's keep going if you don't mind.
Sure.
So let's look at the provisional ballot totals, right? The county certified 3862 provisional ballots received. They reported to the state voter history file that they received 4642 for a difference of 780. And the three townships with the largest difference were Hamilton. That was the township where Monica ran for the Board of Education, Trenton City, and West Windsor. Okay. So if you recall, I said they kept two sets of books, right? So from a separate series of Oprah requests from Mercer, we received a second set of provisional ballot statistics. Mercer County actually received 5,528 provisional ballots, and they rejected 1,288, right? 759 of those 1,288 provisional rejects received a letter stating their provisional vote was not counted because they had already voted by machine. However, as Mike knows, because he's in that list of 759, if all the voting machines were inoperable on election day, how could he have voted by machine, right? So it's simple math. If you look at the math, if you actually received 5,528 provisional ballots, you subtract the 759 that they rejected, but probably shouldn't have, right? And you subtract the 529 for the other legitimate reject reasons, that totals 4,240, right? Versus what the county certified at 3,862. The math just doesn't add up.
And the two books make sense, to be honest. That's what they're doing.
And here, just to pull it all together, the the county certified 3862. They voted. They reported to the state 4642, and the state reported to the federal government 4213, which is much closer to actually the 4240 number that I calculated that probably should have been certified.
Right. Monica,
and,
did you want to?
Monica lost by 268 votes, and that's well past the difference of what potentially could have affected her vote.
Right.
And it's so much more than just the school board. I mean, this is such an important issue, and the fact that our legislators are not furious about this is infuriating to me. Like, why do they not care? This is crazy. This is our freedom. This is so important. So I just hope that we just raise a lot of awareness. I know that we're talking to a lot of people, just making them pay attention, because for so long we just took elections for granted, and we really have to stop doing that. We really need to get this word out and get people thinking in order to save our freedom.
Well said.
Yep. So the last point of the presentation, right? That inconsistent treatment of voters. And so we looked at, because we were able to get access to the poll books on election day, and what the poll book, it shows you what was happening in those first early hours of voting on election day, right? So during the first hour of election day and voting in Mercer County, 1,420 voters checked into the poll book, right? And now remember, all those voting machines were inoperable, and the original instructions were to use provisional ballots, and they were later, and then the instructions were switched an hour or so later to the precincts to stop using provisionals and use the regular ballots, right? So we limited this analysis to the first hour of voting, right? So a little over 1,000 of those first 1,400 individuals in Mercer checked into the poll book without issue, right? They're listed as regular voters and not provisional voters in the poll book, right? However, so 500 of those 1,091 voters later received a letter from Mercer telling them their vote was not counted because they previously voted by machine. And then the balance of 573 were counted without issue. It's incomprehensible. There appear to be no distinction between these two groups, but yet one was counted and one wasn't. Why? And again, we have hundreds of mail-in ballots that weren't counted. We have hundreds of provisional ballots that were rejected, that were not counted, right, because of the inconsistency between the two provisional counts of ballots. And then here again, hundreds not counted for what's not clear, the reason why.
That's wild.
So Ryan, I have a speculation on this, but even with giving them the benefit of the doubt that some of these people actually tried to scan their ballots, right? And when they tried to scan them, that is maybe the trigger that said, oh, well, they made it into the poll book, their ballot was scanned, and therefore when the provisional came in, the system said you voted twice. But the problem is, did the machine scan the ballot and say, oh, I can't read it, and still record them as a voter? It's still a mess up. No matter which way you look at it.
I did not scan my ballot.
Ever. Okay.
I was one of the ones that was rejected, and I went to the poll book as instructed, signed in, and then received a provisional ballot. And that ballot was given back to the poll worker at that point. And I believe placed in a separate bag. So I didn't scan it, that's for sure.
That's what Mark said in the beginning, right?
So let's go to the next bucket. Let's go to the next slide, because that's as I said, 1,000 were checked in without issue, but 329 of those 1,420 were checked in and flagged as required to vote provisionally. And Mike was in one of those buckets, right? So So 65 of those 329 were rejected, as they too received a letter from the county telling they had already voted. That was the bucket that Mike's in, right? Of those remaining 264 voters, 17 were rejected for other reasons, while the balance of 247 were accepted. How can that be?
And like you said beforehand, it was put into a slot and they were scanned later, but somebody who we don't know who was the person doing them. We don't know who was scanning them after the second time, after they were trying to get the provisional ones, because that's what they, for momentarily, told people in Mercer to vote with provisional, but it'll be calculated later. Interesting.
Yeah, because they took all those ballots back to a central location and started scanning them all there. So even though Mike's ballot wasn't scanned in Robbinsville on site, they might have made a mistake and scanned it when they got it back to the central location.
Right. And I understand how you were trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, because looking at the data, you have to look at everything, that maybe they inflated it and there was this whole mishap. But the numbers there's too many mishaps, to be honest, for that to be the case, to be honest.
And I want to emphasize, these are all the county's numbers, right? All this data came from the county. There's nothing that we put together. All we did was try to compare A to B to C. And I mean, I don't need to go through the appendix.
That one spreadsheet is interesting, though, right there, because I didn't understand it until I saw the spreadsheet, Mark. And so for anybody who's more data oriented, I think it's worth going through the level of detail that they have.
So
I wouldn't mind just bringing them up, because people will pause it and look at the slides if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. So let's stay on that one though, Ryan, so we can talk a little bit about that. And as I mentioned, the county had reported receiving 28,080, receiving and accepting 28,080 mail-in votes, right? And in the vote by mail file that we have available to us through an OPRA, the vote by mail file contains all those 28,000 records of individual voters and the date that they applied for the mail-in ballot, the date that the mail-in ballot was sent out, the date that it was returned, the date when it was counted. You can see whether it was accepted, the method that it was received by in the mail, bearer or drop box, and so it's hard to understand how the county comes up with nearly 3,000 less vote by mail ballots certified than they reported to the state as receiving.
Right. The certified ones. That's the interesting, because I've worked campaigns and elections when you're working with this legal matter and stuff, and you don't count the fraudulent ones, but these were certified votes. Interesting.
Okay. Any other comments? Mike, Monica, Drew?
I'd like to
points of emphasis. Yeah.
I'd like to add something that I keep getting questioned on a lot. So a lot of people ask me, what is my background and experience? So in case somebody's watching this and they want to know, well, you're running for sheriff, what's your background and experience? So I have 15 years of experience working in the data analysis field and software development. All right. So I was a data analyst at Princeton University, data analyst at Sprint. I've got an extensive background in programming data analysis. Since then, I've been running my own business as a broker owner of a real estate company. But, I have a master's degree from RPI in management of technology. So this is not foreign stuff to me. And with the way things are going with technology these days, the sheriff better be pretty sharp on technology. Otherwise, he's going to be left in the dust.
Mm-hmm.
Well said.
Mm-hmm.
Well said. And Mark, what can we people viewing this? Should they themselves take it upon the initiative to go to their own counties and get this data like you did for Mercer? You're not even from Mercer and you're leading the charge. What do you recommend viewers to do?
Well, before I answer that, do you mind if we have Monica or Mike
Of
comment
course.
as well?
Of course. Oh, sorry. Yes, of course.
Sure. So I'll just end with I'm just a concerned citizen who wants to help other citizens become as concerned. And I'm just so grateful for Mark just taking the charge and doing all of this work and bringing this to our attention, because we need to shine light on this subject. So we're in it to win it. We're not giving up. We're just going to keep on talking and keep on bringing this up. And we're not going to stop until we get changes. So I'm just so grateful that you had us on today. And I'm sorry for the technical difficulty that
You
I
made
suffered
it, though.
today, but thank you
made
so
it.
much for having us on. And yep, hope to just keep getting the word out. So thank you.
So from my perspective, I know that my vote in this particular case would not have made a difference in Robbinsville or anywhere else. But I still believe very, very firmly that every vote should be counted, and the government has a responsibility to reconcile these numbers. Part of the underlying problem is the organization that they have. And my background is in organizations. They have a board of elections that is appointed by county chairs, the commissioners are. You have a superintendent of elections and an assistant superintendent of elections that is appointed by the governor. And curiously enough, only one of those positions has been filled, and the governor hasn't appointed the other position, which leaves a little bit of imbalance. And the third group is an elected official, being the clerk. Well, the three of them don't really talk to each other. And so when you have an organization and something so important, those three areas have to work together. They talk about, separation of duties, but it is in form only, because in substance, it's not there. If it were, these numbers would tie out, and they don't tie out. So that's part of the problem in the organizational structure. It is also part of the problem that people that are in these positions aren't really ready for the change that did occur in the voting process. If you look back from 2017 to where we are now, we have a whole bunch of changes. Nothing has kept up. Title 19 hasn't kept up. Nothing has kept up. There's been no training or minimal training. And it's a sad commentary right now on where we are, in that our questions are being ducked. If I can't even use a different word than that. So I'm more surprised, not what happened on November of 2020, it's what happened afterwards. That's got me troubled right now. Anyway, that's where I am on this.
Thank you for your,
if I may, I'd like to add to what Mike said, because he makes a really good point. The way that they have the responsibilities broken up, they say that they do it so that nobody can collude and, have an impact on the election. Well, the problem is that if everybody's accountable, nobody's accountable. And that's the situation that we have right now, is nobody's accountable. In addition, if you look at the chairman of the board who was in charge at the time when this all happened, I believe they've retired. The superintendent of elections, who was the superintendent at the time when this happened, they retired. The new people on the board of elections, who are the only ones we get to meet with, I think, at least one of them is brand new. I'm not sure about the rest of them. I wasn't involved prior to that. But they're the only one. They're sitting there. They're stuck with answering all of our questions, and we can't get face-to-face time with the other two branches. And the final piece of this, that's the most amazing piece, is, remember I told you in the beginning how I had this runaround from going to the sheriff, to local police, to the county prosecutor. In the end, I found out that they were all wrong. The superintendent of elections has, sort of like the IRS, they can make the rules, they can force the rules, they can put you in jail. They make all the policy, they make all the decisions. That's the superintendent of elections. He was fully responsible and supposed to be the enforcer. and he's gone.
Ditch town. And usually it happens like that. Mark, you want to finish up? And
Yeah,
then
I'll wrap it up. Thank you, Ryan, for having us, and it's been a pleasure. And hopefully this is the start of a nice collaboration, because the same analysis that I did for Mercer, I did it for every other county in the state. Some results, no one's worse than Mercer. Number are better, and others are on par. I'd leave the viewers with get involved, right? Volunteer to become a poll worker, volunteer to become a poll a challenger, right? Become a candidate like Drew did. He was so affected by it that he said, "I'm going to try to stop it. I'm going to try to make a difference," right? So push for change. Be the person that, like Mike, that won't go away at your commissioner meeting or your board of elections meeting. He won't. And you must push for accountability. You must push for transparency. And if your elected officials don't side with you on those two outcomes, they need to be replaced.
Well said. And we all have to get involved. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Monica, as well as Hillary, for introducing us all. Mark, look for Drew C., Mercer County Sheriff, running. Mike, thank you so much for your wisdom and well-spoken. Thank you, everyone, for watching the NJ First podcast. Please tune in. Follow me at NJ First, at Ryan McDonald USA. And just to quickly give the chronological background, we had the recall Murphy in 2019. It got a lot of grassroots patriots to get involved. There was tents popped up everywhere. Every single county had people signing petitions, getting involved in the election integrity. We had 2022 happen, 2021. We had Audit the Vote, New Jersey. Again, I saw so many active grassroots patriots get involved, but it didn't really come to anything, nothing of fruition. Now we actually have data. We have Mark Demo and his team who gave us stuff that we can actually present to other counties saying, see, there is questions of election integrity. There is facts, and we have to, going forward, it's going to be a long process. 2023 is already among us, but 2024 and into 2025, we can make a change. This will give fire in the hearts of people, as it does me. And I'll be in contact with all of you guys. Thank you for meeting me and speaking with me, and free speech will persevere. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.